Hello, amazing parents. In this video, we're going to explore how to improve low tone without strength training. We're going to explore a concept called stacking the bones. And when the brain is able to coordinate our entire bodies to stack the bones in the most efficient way for our unique body, that's when movement can become effortless. Now, strong muscles are fantastic and we need muscle strength to move through this world. But if you're only focusing on muscle strength, then you're missing a huge piece of the puzzle for most of our kids. Strong muscles are wonderful, but if the brain can't coordinate and organize those muscles how we want to, so we can move through the world and be functional and do things that we want, then we're missing a huge giant piece of the entire puzzle. So how does your child's brain organize how they hold their head over top of their spine, over top of their pelvis? When our kids don't have good head control or are not sitting up independently, often therapies focus on core muscle strength or neck muscle strength, and they're really missing that bigger piece of how does the child's brain organize the head over top of the spine, over top of the pelvis. And I'm going to show you a simple, easy way to help your child's brain become aware of how are they holding their head over top of their spine, over their pelvis. But first, a story of how my daughter first learned how to sit. This was before I became an Anat Baniel method practitioner. I simply knew she was delayed in her milestones and I wanted her to be age appropriate, so I put her in a sitting position. Now, her brain at that time had no idea that she had a pelvis that could roll forward and backward. Her pelvis was kind of stuck in a backward position, tilted under, putting more pressure onto her tailbone. Her brain didn't know it had the option of rolling forward. So she was stuck in this position here. When I put her in a sitting position, her pelvis tucked under, her brain didn't know that she had a head that could be organized over top of the spine, over top of the pelvis. So her head was behind her pelvis, which of course feels like you're going to fall over. So she counterbalanced her head being behind her pelvis by putting her arms out to stabilize herself. Now, this is sitting, and I was ecstatic that her brain was able to figure out how to sit, but there was no variation in it. She couldn't get into this position. She couldn't get out of this position. If she went to grab a toy, she would topple over simply because her brain had no idea that it had a pelvis connected to a spine, connected to a head. Now, in this position, she had amazing core ab muscles. You need a lot of ab muscles to hold your head behind your pelvis and still stay upright and not fall over. So you can visually see that having a strong core is wonderful, but the brain still has to know how to coordinate and organize the head over top of the spine, over top of the pelvis, or you're locked into very little choice in how you move. We want our kids to be able to have options in their movement, to get into the position, to get out, to reach for things. And as I'm moving around, rolling my pelvis on the floor to reach for things, to move into different positions, my brain has enough information and enough experience to be able to coordinate and balance my head over top of my spine, over top of my pelvis. And that's what we want for our kids. But it starts with the brain simply being aware of where is the head in relationship to the spine, to the pelvis. And we can give our kids that information with our soft, gentle hands to highlight to their brain what these body parts are doing and how they relate to each other. So I'm going to show you quickly the power of your touch on yourself. So follow along, and then I'll show you how to transfer that to your child. So simply place one hand on your hip bone and the other hand on the top of your head. And imagine your pelvis like a ball that can roll backwards to put more pressure onto your tailbone, and then just come back to your neutral sitting position. So you're rolling slowly backwards, putting more pressure onto your tailbone, feeling your hip bone roll backwards as well, and coming back to sitting. And as you're doing this slow, gentle movement, what is your head doing? How is your brain automatically organizing how you're maintaining your balance with your head? What is moving to counterbalance the movement of rolling backwards of your pelvis? Your head is probably moving a little bit forward. Your spine has to move. Your vertebrae have to be coordinated. Your brain has to organize a lot of different muscles to contract and let go just at the right timing to balance our head over top of our spine, over top of our pelvis in the least amount of effort. Now, what does it look like if we don't have that organization and we roll our pelvis back and we just keep our spine straight and our head right over top of our spine like this? We end up almost falling over, and I'm using a lot of core muscle and stomach muscles to hold myself upright. This doesn't feel good, and it constricts my movement. I don't feel like I could get into and out of it very easily, and I'm gonna get tired really fast. Whereas because my brain knows and has the experience and the feeling of balancing my head and coordinating all of my different vertebrae to be able to bend and move so my head counterbalances the movement of rolling back the pelvis, I can do this movement for a really long time because it's taking the least amount of effort. My brain is able to coordinate my movements really well, really efficiently. And that's what we want for our kids. All right, so one more movement just to demonstrate it, because our pelvises don't just roll backwards in one direction. They also can roll to the left and to the right in 3 dimensions. So with one hand on your pelvis and one hand on your head, just roll your pelvis to the left and to the right, lifting up the other side of the pelvis. So you're rolling more onto the right side, the left side of the pelvis lifts up, rolling to the left and to the right. And notice, what does your head automatically do? How does your brain automatically organize yourself so you're using the least amount of effort to hold yourself upright and to balance? Your brain knows how to bend your vertebrae, move your vertebrae, coordinate everything so your head is counterbalancing the movement of rolling your pelvis. And you can do little circles with your pelvis and feel how your brain automatically knows how to maintain your balance in all sorts of different positions. So let's give that type of quality information to our children. So one of the easiest ways is simply every time you pick your child up, become aware of where you place your hand on their pelvis here and the other hand underneath their head along their spine. So with my specific body dimensions and the doll's body dimensions, I can do this quite easily, but you'll have to adjust to your specific child. So I have actually my thumb underneath her head. So with my thumb, I'm actually shining a spotlight to her brain. Hey, this is where your head is in space. And with my fingers here, kind of down along her spine here, I'm also shining a spotlight to her brain saying, hey, this is where your spine is. Is there a possibility of movement when I roll your pelvis towards me right before I'm about to pick her up? So I'm gonna slow down picking her up. I'm not gonna just pick her up. I'm actually gonna slow down and roll the pelvis just a little bit, allowing her brain the chance to experience what happens when I roll the pelvis a little bit towards me. What happens with her head and her spine? Does her brain know that she can coordinate the spine turning and the head turning towards me? And we're simply giving her brain the chance to experience that connection between her head, her spine, and her pelvis. And then as I go to fully pick her up, I'm going to put my hand underneath her pelvis, bring her up into my arms, my hand still on her head, reminding her brain that everything's connected. And in this position here, I can think of her pelvis like a ball that can roll a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. And with this hand here, I'm reminding her brain that she has a spine and a head that might be able to counterbalance that movement in the pelvis. I'm reminding her brain that these different body parts can talk to each other, that they're connected, they can help each other out to maintain balance and functional movement. So you can roll the pelvis to the left and to the right. You can also do it forward and backwards. So as I'm rolling her pelvis backward, her head might come more into my shoulder. As I'm rolling her pelvis forward, her head might arch a little bit, nice and slow and gentle. And again, I'm not physically trying to move her. I'm simply initiating the movement with the pelvis in tiny little movements up to the left and to the right. And I'm highlighting to her brain, what possibility does her spine and her head have? Maybe there's a possibility there. And of course, if you have an older, taller, bigger child, you might not be able to put them in your arms anymore. But another wonderful position is if you're sitting in a chair, they can simply sit on your lap like this. One hand on the pelvis, another hand gently on the head. And I like to do the movement with the child because as I roll my pelvis backwards, guess what happens here? They're rolling their pelvis backwards. As my head moves forward, their head's moving forward. And you can just roll your pelvis forward and backwards with them sitting in your lap. It's a lot easier to do when you're in a chair, maybe on a sofa or the edge of a chair. It's a lot easier to do. But this is a great option for older kids. And if they're even older and they won't fit on your lap anymore, you can simply spread your legs, put them in between your legs, have them resting up against you, especially if they don't have good head control yet, because they feel safe up against you, safe to explore new movements. One hand again is on the hip bone here, the other hand gently on the head, and I'm slowly rolling my pelvis backwards, feeling her pelvis roll too, reminding her brain with this hand that she has a head that might be able to move and be coordinated with that rolling of the pelvis. So we can go backwards and forward, we can go to the left and to the right, gently highlighting to their brain that they have all of these wonderful parts, a pelvis, a spine, and a head that can be coordinated together for better balance and coordination with the least amount of effort. You really can improve low tone without increasing muscle mass. All right, hopefully this was helpful and that now you have a better understanding of that. Yes, you really can improve low tone by stacking the bones, by bringing the brain's awareness to the head, spine, and pelvis and how they interact and relate to each other. And it's not just about muscle strength. It's how the brain coordinates everything. So happy exploring movement, and we will see you in the next video, okay? Bye.